Good afternoon, everybody. I am Yixiang, and you can just call me Zero if you find it very hard pronouncing. This is the last study in my PhD program, so I do it together with my supervisors, Teresa de la HERA and also Jeroen JANSZ. And I'm a PhD candidate from Erasmus University, Rotterdam. So the study that I'm going to present here today is on the role of cultural experience that the Chinese mobile game players have and how such experience influence their cultural identity. So I'm going to dive into some background, introduction, the research question, followed with the methodology, and then I'm going to focus mainly on the results because I think I have too much information to share today, followed with a simple discussion because these are preliminary results. It's still under analysis. It's almost done. I'll get it as soon as possible. So as I mentioned, it belongs to like a bigger project. So before that, firstly, we did a systematic literature review on the representation of cultural heritage in mobile games. So in which we found there's a neglected section of intangible cultural heritage, the representation of it in academia. And then followed by a content analysis of 30 mobile games of gameplay to find what kinds of intangible cultural heritage were largely represented into those games. Trust me, it's not really fun because you have to play 30 games in 2 months. I mean, Genshin Impact was fun, Honor of Kings was fun, but yeah. And then followed by an expert interview on how they make decisions to represent or to integrate Chinese intangible cultural heritage. I'm going to address it as ICH in a later part. How they make decisions, what are the main considerations when they are designing their games, what are the purposes and goals. And we found like 3 main goals: cultural dissemination, player engagement, and monetization. And then we come to the last part of the research, which is the perspective of who is actually playing the game. So we bring about the concept of cultural experience and also cultural identity. So how their cultural experience when they're playing the games, how they influence their identities. That's where we kind of introduce a little bit about cultural identity. I think everybody more or less are familiar with this term. Frankly speaking, it's kind of like your sense of belonging to certain cultural groups. It doesn't have to be one because Conti kind of argued that your cultural identity is dialogic, plural, and dynamic. So through the communication with between you and other members in the same cultural groups or people from other cultural group or like you and the bigger cultural group, your sense of cultural identity is changing, or it can be plural. You might feel sense of belonging to different cultural groups. So it's dynamic. And then to have this theoretical framework, we bring about the cultural experience in which Jiang, Qian, and Zhang, I don't know which tone is it. They introduced 4 aspects of cultural experience, which are emotional connection, which are the instinct, emotional reaction that you see cultural elements in the game. Design aesthetics, as in those visual elements that integrate Chinese, not necessarily Chinese, but like cultural elements, and also perceived playfulness regarding the gameplay elements that kind of integrate cultural elements in the game. And then last but not least, knowledge acquisition is the experience of acquiring a certain cultural knowledge when you're playing the games. So we use this framework to as a code book to design our interview guide. And then we conducted 18 interviews with Chinese players from across the country. I had the chance of traveling around, so that's also fun. And then we conducted a thematic analysis, and here is like an overview of the demographics. Yeah, and then I'm just gonna present the results based on the different aspects of cultural experience, so which is easier for me and you to understand it. So I put design aesthetics in the first place because most of the players find it very vital to the design aesthetics very vital to their gameplay, the start of their gameplay, and the continuity of their gameplay. A lot of them mentioned that it has to be good looking, or she or he has to be good looking for me to actually have some feeling for the game, for the characters, to start experience in the anything in the gameplay. And the same logic goes to the world view, the design of the world, the design of characters, and design of anything visual. And then also they mentioned that they are by nature more connected to Chinese elements. They're like, I don't know the reason why, but every time I see Chinese intangible cultural heritage elements represented in the game, I would feel closer to the world, or the characters. And in terms of its role in the shaping or enhancement of the cultural heritage, they would have this sense of whatever is abstract, whatever we learn in textbook, coming to life, coming to this concreteness that you can see on your screen, and then you will have a deeper recognition of your cultural identity. And because of the beautiful aesthetic design, they feel more eager to introduce the games to international players. This kind of echoes with the results of our expert interview, in which a lot of designers mentioned that once they are trying to connect or appeal to the international market, aesthetic design comes first. And then we come to the perceived playfulness. We found two different game mechanics, which are the core gameplay mechanics. For example, RPG is about story, open world is about world exploration, and then mobile game is about PvP combat. And then the event-based mini games, which are the mini games that every spring festival that you can see, there are a lot of mini games that you can interact aside from the main quest. So in terms of the core gameplay mechanics, the players have this sense of RPG and also open world games. You need the ICH elements represented in the game be consistent with the worldview design, with the character design, their personas, for them to further immerse into the game world, or immerse or like have empathy of the character's story or the character's personas. Whereas when they're talking about mobile games, for example, Honor of Kings is the only game that they mentioned a lot. It's kind of have this dominant role. They would sense this relatively limited space for representation, because it's mainly about the character's skin, the hero's skins, that is kind of the only place that they sense the representation of ICH elements. For example, the top picture where you can see the using of the story farewell my concubine, 霸王别姬, on the two characters, Yu Ji and Xiang Yu. I hope I'm correct. I'm really bad at history. They have this coupled skin, whereas if the two characters are being played in the same team, they would have like voice-over interaction in the combat. So they would feel closer to the actual ICH elements that are being represented. And then it comes to the event-based mini games. They would sense there is more freedom of representing Chinese ICH elements, because it's apart from the main quest, so it can be different, or it can be separated from the main story. For example, you can see the the bottom picture, that's when Identity 5 has this collaboration with Tang Sancai, the Tang Dynasty 3-color ceramics, where you can have this hands-on experience of how to create the ceramic. They would have this more or less experience, so they would feel in this process of appreciation and immersion, they would feel the actual culture being coming into life because you can interact with it. And then it comes to the emotional connection. We find this a little bit longitudinal results where when they firstly see Chinese ICH elements in the game, they would feel like, oh, this is stunning, this is different from what I have experienced before. And what's special about China is like, China is like the whole identity group is massive with diverse cultural elements. So when it comes to the elements they are familiar with or they grew up with, they would have instant emotional connection. But when it comes to cultural elements from other regions or like other ethnic minority, they would sense, oh, this is different, this is unfamiliar, but it still belongs to this bigger cultural group. So they would feel this amazingly diverse situation of, oh, China is big, the Chinese identity is big, the Chinese cultural group is big, so they will have this bigger sense of, a deeper sense of, or deeper recognition of their identity. And then after the long time playing Chinese mobile games, most of them would feel numb. There's nothing really much. It's like every festival, every special time in a year, there's at least something being represented in the game. And they would feel, especially in Honor of Kings, I'm no judgment, but like they would feel, it's not me, they would feel, yeah, it's kind of like this forced sense of, oh, they have to do something to satisfy the players or like even to satisfy the government. They would have this sense of feeling. So, but all in all, they would also have this sense of belonging, pride, breaking, and also they would feel like the breaking this emotional connection would break the stereotype that they have for whatever we call traditional or cultural in the past, because this is something that you can interact in a game. And the last but not least, knowledge acquisition. This is also unique about China because you might know the term Gaokao or like college entrance examination that students in mainland China we have to go through, and we have this saying of the day of your Gaokao is the day that you know the most in your life, and then slowly you're going to forget about everything, about cultural elements, about what's tradition and what's traditional and what's historical. But then all of a sudden, when Chinese mobile games become so popular, you start seeing them in your games. So it's more as in like this boomerang effect of whatever I have forgotten coming to my memory. And also all of this traumatic memory when you have to kill every brain cell in your brain to memorize coming to life. So those traumatic, tragic memory also come into life. And also in terms of how they want to receive knowledge, they would prefer this very natural integration of ICH elements rather than, oh, we've done this, we collaborated with the museum, this is what we have integrated. Honor of Kings does this. This is what we have integrated into the games, and we have a list of this and that. In this way, they would feel this sense of mandatory education, and this is something that they want to avoid when they're playing the games. But still, with knowledge acquisition, they would have this enhancement of cultural identity, stronger recognition of their cultural identity because they know more about their own culture. And also, what's special is after they acquire certain cultural knowledge in the gameplay, they would long for real life exploration. For example, going back to the poem, going back to the museum, to on site to see whatever is being represented actually looks like. So all in all, the role of mobile games, they see this as a modern bridge between the cultural elements, the ICH elements, and the media users. And in terms of the importance of these four aspects, yeah, these aesthetic comes first, playfulness comes second, emotional connect comes third, and knowledge acquisition comes fourth. And the player's background really matters, and yeah, and then it goes back to the argument of cultural identity is dynamic. And yeah, these are the QR code of the literature review and also the game content analysis. If you're interested, you can read them, and don't forget to follow me on Bilibili and Rednote. Yeah, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. We're now open to questions.
Thank you, Yixiang, for the presentation. I'm going to take a critical position here and argue that as a German, I've never met another German that says because of cultural heritage, I specifically want to play a game. It might just be because we have a lot of Nazi history in our history. But even if you look further back, I would never argue that culture is the reason why Germans want to play a specific game or feel more connected to it. I think this is a very Chinese essentialist perspective and created by state narratives that demand of you that we have a special culture that needs to be represented in game aesthetics, even game mechanics, and then the populace specifically are taking up those narratives and saying, yeah, because of this reason I want to play the game. It's not their cultural heritage, but state narratives.
Yeah, so I think back in days, I think when Honor of Kings started being popular, they started using like historical figures to be the heroes in the game, and they received much criticism about not being accurate in the game. But I think the game mechanics and the gameplay is the first thing that attracts those players to play, and then it started to find a way to become more popular by representing Chinese cultures, and then people would have more proud and then continue playing the game. And then I think when Genshin Impact was famous in the first place, because Liyue wasn't the first region that the gamers experienced in the game. So I think in the first place, when players started playing the games, they still trying to look for the core essence of the game mechanics to have this, whether it's interesting to play, and then they start finding out Chinese elements being represented, and then become more interested. So I think that's the process. But then still, still it's important, and I think it's a way for the developers, the designers to make their games more popular, because they find it very efficient to make money because of the success of Honor of Kings. And then I think that's something that most of the designers are kind of the trend that they're chasing right now. So that's the results. That's the result based on the extra interview. So I hope that answers your question. Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions?
Thank you for a really interesting presentation. I wanted to reflect a bit further. I'm glad you mentioned about the fact that Chinese is a very big category. I'm also Chinese, but I'm not from mainland China as well, and that may or may not potentially be a difference as well. And I guess I wondered whether or not your results are applicable from that perspective, like from the wider, group of Chinese people. Like, for example, I think about, in the literature they talk about second and third generation immigrant Chinese that have a dissonance in their dual identities of being Chinese and yet being in their home countries as well. For example, maybe seeing Chinese ethnicities in their games might, put them off it. But on the other hand, I will also say, I think responding to the first speaker's kind of point, I guess one argument for it is the fact that the racial theory will state that people actually wanting to see representations from themselves actually comes from a perspective that, the default is that most media doesn't have Chinese, whereas, people not caring about whether or not you see, say, for example, white people in games, comes because, we see it every day in much the same way that, guys don't usually worry so much about being safe on the street, whereas women really do. And as a result, when I walk on the street, actually not being my first priority comes from a position of privilege. So, yeah, just some reflections. Be interested to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, thank you. All of the interviewees, first of all, they're from mainland China, or I think one or two are from the Cantonese area. So maybe like Hong Kong and Guangdong province, they can understand it, like they speak exactly the same language, but they kind of understand each other's, or they grew up with the similar kind of I don't want to be so sensitive though. Grew up with a similar kind of culture, so I think in this regard they would. I think my results doesn't really apply to like ethnically Chinese people that, or like they were born or like grew up overseas, but still. My friends, like my ethnically Chinese friends, they are like still happy to see some kind of Chinese elements being represented in the games, and also some people grew up with more or less in the Western background, and they didn't really find Chinese identity that proud of their identity, but when they see the Chinese mobile games being more popular, and then Chinese culture has this right of discourse in the international market, they would start recognize more in their own ethnic background, and then start slowly building up their Chinese identity. But still, it's plural. You can feel belong to the Western background, and also, but still feel belong to the Chinese community. So it's not like a contradictory. Hope that answers. Yeah.
We're running a couple of minutes late, so let's move on to the second presenter.